Welcome to Not Entirely Unlike Tea with Christine Collins. Hey there, it's Christine Collins, and I wanted to share with you something that can be a little bit fun, and also I think it'll be informative too. One thing that comes up surprisingly often into my world is that in conversation with various different people, clients and otherwise, is that there tends to be a bit of an assumption about me, since I'm a hypnotherapist, that I have just always been fully subscribed and bought in to this modality. And it always makes me laugh just a little because really nothing could be further from the truth. So my educational background, while it is diverse, a big component of it was my master's in psychology, which was very research focused, and so much so that even in regular interactions in life, I noticed myself wanting to cite my sources and back everything up with research and evidence. And so when I first encountered the concept of hypnosis, after making those career changes that ultimately led to where I am now, I was incredibly skeptical. I was sort of that student that just wasn't sure about all of this and was a little concerned that hypnosis seemed a little hokey to me at first. I had heard about stage hypnosis and people clucking like a chicken or something like that. And I did not fully understand the therapeutic use of it until I studied it. And I wasn't going to. I actually went in initially for just doing a coaching certification. And whenever hypnosis would be mentioned, I would just sort of tune it out because to me, that wasn't the reason that I was there. Interestingly enough, several months later, I was back and as a hypnosis student. And in doing that study, I started to recognize that I had beliefs that I was not even aware of that were governing my life just like they do for all of us. We're kind of walking around and making choices and going through our behaviors based on something that we believe is true. And we believe those things are true either because we had some kind of firsthand experience or because someone that we trusted told us it was so. And the problem with that is that the person who told us that thing may have been wrong, they may have been manipulative, or they may have not really known anything else. It was just that someone else had told it to them. Sometimes these things get passed down in our society and families and culture. And it comes across as this is the way that it is, this is the way that it must be, this is the way that it should be. And because of those beliefs, we make all of our choices and don't even realize that it's our belief that's forming the choice and the action, and therefore the consequences and the outcomes of all that we're doing. And once I started to see those lines in my own life, it's kind of like seeing inside the matrix and being able to start taking it apart and recognizing how much that affects and influences everything. And it starts to become very clear that we are hypnotized already. So sometimes people will say things like, do I need hypnosis? Or I'm going to go do hypnosis or receive hypnosis. And it's an interesting statement because the reality is that we are all hypnotized in different ways from a very young age. Children that are under the age of 7 are largely in a theta brainwave a lot of the time. They are very, very suggestible. And if you tell them things, they tend to believe those things until experience or someone else shows them differently. And so we all kind of grew up with that pre-formed belief structure that along the way will either hold steady or be shaken or will crumble based on what happens based on our life. And that's the origin that we begin with. And so we start out hypnotized in many different ways. And of course, not all of that is problematic or bad. Certainly, we have to be able to tell small children not to do dangerous things, in order to keep them safe. And that is largely why they're so suggestible, so that we can keep them safe. We tell them hold hands while crossing the street. And most of the time, they just accept those things. But it's in place there for a reason, and that reason is survival. But apart from those pieces, there's of course problematic early hypnosis that can happen when a belief is planted that you're not good at something, you're not worthy of something. Other types of people only can have this experience and not you. Things like wealth or healthy relationships or happiness or some specific type of lifestyle. And a lot of times it's not even overtly articulated. It's often very subconscious. It's from hearing certain things being said, seeing the way people that you're learning from tend to do certain things, and then you're carrying around these beliefs. And it can take quite a bit to unpack those if you're trying to do it consciously with cognitive skills. But hypnosis is very effective because it takes us back down into those deeper brainwaves, the alpha and the theta brainwaves, which are brainwaves that happen prior to being fully asleep. So there are brainwaves in which we are very alert and fully awake, and then there's a spectrum leading down into full sleep and deep sleep. And alpha and theta are kind of in the middle. It's kind of like a twilight as you're just dozing off. And in that stage, we become very suggestible. And it's an opportunity to reprogram something that's in there that's not serving us. So something that's problematic or toxic or harmful to our well-being or to our ability to move forward successfully. So while there are beliefs that are worth holding on to, perhaps religious beliefs, family beliefs, things that you carry and hold very sacred, there are also plenty of beliefs that are just not helpful, that you should never go for a goal or a dream because people like us just don't do things like that, or you're just not good at some specific thing and it's impossible for you to learn how to do that. You don't have natural skills in that, whether it's sports or singing or performing or writing or speaking. And those types of beliefs are called limiting, because they are limiting us from doing something or becoming something more. And those beliefs deeply impact the choices that we make, which deeply impact the outcomes and the very real world results that we experience. If you don't believe that something is possible at all, it's going to be very difficult to do that thing. So hypnosis allows us to open kind of a tiny window of possibility and just introduce the possibility. So it's not necessarily about going from, I absolutely don't believe this, that's absolutely impossible, all the way to the other end of the spectrum, like this will absolutely happen. It's more about introducing a doubt into the belief, introducing a possibility that, maybe there is a chance. Even if it's a slim chance, maybe there is a little chance that I could do this or that this really cool thing could happen. And once you open that little window of possibilities, you allow for some new things to begin to flow in. And a lot of times we don't realize that our beliefs are pliable, that we are pliable and changeable over time. We are capable of building new neural pathways through the process of neuroplasticity, meaning that just because we think a certain way today doesn't mean that we're stuck with that forever. We can change our mind, literally. And through the process of hypnosis, we can identify the areas that we're unsatisfied with and allow them to become up-leveled. Now, while it is true that some people will have a single one-time exposure to hypnosis and experience significant transformation, the reality is that the vast majority of people, at least in my experience, will need multiple exposures. And part of that is because building new neural pathways is far more successful with repetition. Neuroscientifically, if we embed repetition in a change that we are hoping to make, it really helps the process along in building those new pathways in our brains. So the more that we go in and reinforce that new belief, the more effective the process of hypnosis can be. And it's partly because of that understanding that led me to create hypnosis audios as a recording. Now, this goes back to about 2018 for me. And at that time, I was doing mostly live hypnosis. I had both some in-person clients and some long-distance clients. And I noticed that all of the sessions went really well, and I could see a lot of benefit that my clients were deriving. But I couldn't help feel like, this could be even better. I want to create an even better experience. And that was how this kind of got started. It really came to a head for me after one time I had one client, and it only happened once, where his internet crashed out during one of our sessions, and so he was kicked off of the call, and we were able to come back together and pick back up again from where we had left off. But I noticed in hindsight that for me, this was not the type of experience that I felt was optimal. And even with the in-person sessions, there are many, many things that can come up, dogs barking and various other things in the background. And of course, hypnosis does help you to tune out those background things. But I started to think more and more about improving the client experience and how much better the experience would be for them if they could be laying down comfortably in their own space, whether it's a couch or a bed or a chair, on their own time, at a time that is optimal for them, and to be capable of listening over and over again. Sometimes I would just say something really genius during a session and think, oh my goodness, I wish that had been recorded. It was really powerful. And so around that time, I started to think about ways that I could record hypnosis. I actually got the idea in the middle of the night. And there are reasons for that I'll explain in a different podcast, why we often get our best ideas when we're just dozing off to sleep or in the shower or trying to do something relaxing. There are some neuroscientific reasons for that. But I got this idea in the middle of the night, and I woke up probably around 2 or 3 a.m. and just had to immediately start figuring out if there was a way that I could do these recordings. So I used myself as a guinea pig, as I often do, and I decided to write down all the different things in my life that I found challenging at that time, the different problems that I was having. And I decided that I would make myself a master hypnosis to encompass somewhere between 2 and 4 issues for myself. Now, typically you would isolate to just one thing, but this was sort of like an experiment for me. And so I created this hypnosis for myself. It was about 15 minutes long, and I started listening to it every single day. I already had adopted a practice of the first 15 minutes of every morning being set aside for meditation or some other type of mindfulness practice, because I noticed that when I did things like that, as opposed to grab my phone and dive into emails and texts, it really would ruin my day sometimes. And there would be particular emails or texts from particular people that if I just looked at that first thing in the morning, it just messed up my whole vibration for the day. And so beginning this practice of keeping that first 15-minute segment sacred to some form of mindset support, and that eventually became this hypnosis tool. Then I would go into my day, my mood was set, I had some ideas for things that I wanted to focus on, and my own intentions for myself were clear before I began to allow other people's intentions to come in and bombard me. So I listened every morning, And even though I very much believed in hypnosis by this time, because I had been working as a hypnotherapist and had clients and seen their successes, even though I believed in the process, I was personally astounded by my own experience and the results that I had. So I had put about 4 different issues into the hypnosis audio, and out of those 4, one of them continued to be sort of a sticky one for me, but the other 3 out of those 4 issues began to make big improvements in different ways. And I had not changed anything else. I had not made any other behavioral change that was deliberate for this process. But in using the hypnosis and beginning to change some of the beliefs around those struggles at the core, it did begin to impact my choices and my behaviors, and of course, the results and the outcomes around me. And when we change our thoughts, we really do change the world, and that is because the way that we look at things, the way that we think about things, and the way that we feel about things influences what we do, and what we do influences the world around us. So after that, I decided, okay, I've got to get this out there, at least to my clients, for them to be able to have this experience. Because the other thing I noticed was how wonderful it was to be cuddled up in my bed, to have my lovely hypnosis. I had set it to some music. It was very soothing, and it was such a gorgeous, relaxing, and soothing experience that I also found that in addition to the things I had embedded in it to change the beliefs and the specific issues I was having, it also really helped with anxiety and my mood. And there are neuroscientific reasons for that as well. But I realized that it was time to begin sharing this out. And so I started to make these recordings for my clients and for a handful of special people in my life. And then there started to be more and more success stories with those recordings. And so that's how it was born. And I started off by taking requests with my existing clients, issues that they were working on, things around weight release and sleep and relationships and family. And so those were some of the earliest recordings that I made. And then over time, I started to create more around creativity and being able to do things in a business setting, building your confidence, getting good results. And as the collection accumulated, I decided I had to gather everything into a space. And that is how the Hypno-Pothecary was born, lovingly dubbed the Poth. It became a membership, and it's now been going strong for several years, and it's probably one of the coolest collections of things that I have created, and I am a pretty prolific creator. I've made a lot of different things, some of which are still sitting in a draft file somewhere, but this one really felt useful. And I've been so privileged and blessed to receive the gorgeous feedback from clients that they also find it deeply useful. And there have been so many beautiful stories about incredible transformational experiences that they've had over the years. But where I came to is not where I began. And so even the journey that I was on with understanding hypnosis better was a transformation in my belief system, because I really did initially feel like it was a little bit hokey and I wasn't sure if I could trust it, and I didn't know if it was real. And it wasn't until I not only experienced it for myself, which happened to me as a student, learning how to become a hypnotherapist. And also, I, of course, went and did my own bits of research and studying some of the different articles and reflections on neuroscience and how it all kind of ties together. And slowly I began to be convinced. And if I wasn't before, I definitely am now, because it's now been several years of hearing from other people beyond my own experience of how transformational having those audios has been for them. And as we're wrapping up here today, our little chat around hypnosis, I would like to invite you that if you are curious to read some of those stories, they do all exist on my website at transformcreate.com. And that will allow you to see a little bit more insight into what I'm describing here, and not just take my word for it, but actually see the many dozens of people who have had experience with my hypnosis. And there is, of course, quite a bit of information online, if you are interested in learning more about it. But my website does have some little videos, some educational pieces to help you to better understand how it works and why it works. And of course, I'm always happy to answer your questions should you have them. So I hope you've enjoyed this little journey here today. And until we connect again, I wish you a most magical and creative rest of your day. Thanks for listening. This is Christine Collins at transformcreate.com.